Brothers, um, I decided to make a video, an English video, um, about a visualization which I used to help Daniele understand where I came from. And I realized this the moment I liberated myself from PTSD back in January. I also immediately knew where I came from. And um, this, in my opinion, might help if you're a veteran struggling with PTSD to communicate with your partner and to be able to show where you are on a particular day in a particular battle. Um, not only for your partner but also for your therapist or anyone, basically, in order to explain that, for example, that you're not feeling okay, or a type of action is working counterproductive. Um, so I hope this helps. Um, the I call it my cement space or concrete space, as you were. So yeah, let me just begin. This space is wet. It's cold. It has no windows or palpable doors. You can't see a hand in front of your face. It's pitch black. Um, I can hear though. I can hear you. Um, I can communicate through the wall, so to speak. I cannot remember being out of that area, that's the space, the concrete space, ever since I got out in January 2021. It doesn't mean I was born there. Apart from my parents who divorced when I was 6 and my dad left for Chicago when I was 9, I had I enjoyed a relative carefree childhood until I was 18. When I enlisted, as you know, some operational incidents when I was deployed happened, which I'm 100% sure that I ended up in that concrete space, in that concrete room, an asylum, so to speak, for traumatic stress moments. My mother always said I dropped you off in Den Helder as my sweet son of you of humor and positivity, but you came back like an animal. What my mother saw then, I did not see because I came back in that shaman space. I could only hear, but it was incomprehensible. I didn't understand. I made sure, though, that it was livable. I had my weapons, my training to be able to survive, which is fine. After I got honorably discharged, I had several jobs, but never experienced something like a homecoming. I never came home, never trusted anything, which is logical in retrospect. Because after all, I was somewhere else. I did have successes. I lived as if there was no tomorrow. And if there wasn't, I was okay with that. That was fine too. That attitude and, self confidence and just a drive that nothing is too crazy, I managed to do good things with different masks, though. And then something earth shattering happened because in October 2015, I got hit by a car, knocked off my bike by a car with 70 kilometers an hour. And It felt like a large crack appeared in a wall within my concrete space, and it became to fill with water. Water came in. I could hear it seeping. I couldn't locate where, but the fear I experienced from that was intense and life changing. During that time, the, there was a door suddenly slammed open with a great deal of violence, and it wasn't liberating at all. This blinding light through that door came in and caused panic because I couldn't see. I could hear things and talks, and then suddenly I got pulled by my arm, and I, it was very hard to understand what was going on. I felt anger and rage and fought to free myself from that grasp, and and it turned out after an hour or so of struggling and fighting, that door was closed again, and I sat back in my corner. Um, that happened with regularity. Often I couldn't see or hear or feel anything for hours, even days at some point. It was like looking in the sun too long. Just you couldn't see, and it made sleeping increasingly difficult. So the moments that the door was suddenly kicked open became more frequent and more intense. I was pulled harder with more violence, and during that time, after after those moments, I went back completely into survival mode. Yeah. The urge to survive, though, prevailed, and I was accompanied with rage. A fire was within me, and I felt pain everywhere in my body. Meanwhile, that room is filling up with water. I couldn't sleep no more lying down because my head would be underwater, which at some points I didn't care. I tried. Like the time I got stuck on a bollard under a patrol vessel. It was coming down gently by the ebb tide. The feeling of knowing that you're going to die was the one I sought again at times in that concrete space. But something kept me above the waterline. There was a moment when the door would open and I heard familiar sounds and smells and voices. And there were moments that I haven't dared to stand up and walk towards that door, even though it was blinding light, and then, bam, smashed my face into the wet, cold wall. Injured myself several times pretty badly. And I would crawl back into that corner, ready to fight. In the most recent years, this untraceable door in the concrete space was opened violently several times and repeatedly until this bizarre moment happened. December 2019. That was the moment something completely different happened. The door opened, but without sound, and oddly enough, it remained ajar just a wee bit. A tiny crack, no more than 2 centimeters. A soft light came in. I could see it. It wasn't blinding. And I could see the path towards that door. And I could feel warm air. And I heard a soft voice whispering, not shouting, sweet and understanding and positive. So it was weird. There was nobody trying to grasp me or something, and there was nobody in that space. So, but I perceived everything. I got curious. I actually found it terribly scary to go look based on my experiences, but at times I crept closer and closer to that light, piece step by step, until I reached that door. And for the first time in my life, I could grasp the door, that elusive door, and the intense feeling of happiness and joy was enormous. It's like a piece of control I suddenly had of my life, but I remained skittish, obviously. So as time passed, I even dared to open the door in the bright light and trying to look in that corridor and just following that soft voice and at some point I saw Daniela there in that corridor sitting against the wall next to the door she opened, and she pointed next to me to her. So, sit here. It resulted in a moment where I actually dared to stand up. And after all those years, that was tough, but okay. And after all those years, I was standing on my own feet with my eyes opened and looking in that corridor, thinking, wow, that looks amazing, but whoa, this is very busy, and what a crowd. All sort of things passed by in that corridor, and sometimes I dive back in that concrete space of mine because several things came at me which were recognizable, and I started to resent and hate over the past 20 years. So, that happened regularly in the beginning, but the same thing happened over and over again. That door just silently opened, just by the crack, and it became easier for me to follow that voice, follow that soft light, and at some point I labeled that voice as being safe, and it gave me a strange feeling inside, warmth, and I started to long for it. During the time I was standing in that corridor, I began to gulp down a lot of knowledge which passed by, and I just grabbed it with two hands. And it's like I haven't been drinking for 20 years. I was just absorbing it. The gluttony was enormous, and I noticed that I dared to walk further and further away from that concrete space. A little later, Daniela went for long walks, curiously looking around in other doors, and felt good. And irritatingly, though, the walks always ended up back at that corridor, or back at that concrete space, which I found really frustrating. That I felt anger rising because it wasn't fair, right? I was outside, I was standing, I had Daniela, I was safe. I was normal, right? Normal again. By continuing to gain knowledge and working with that knowledge during the walks in that corridor, it became experiences, positive, very good, and grateful experiences. And I began to see further, and I felt calmer and more confident. And I even dared to go out by myself within that corridor and have Daniela stay behind wisely. But I felt relaxed to do so. And then it was a tough and very emotional moment for me when Dani asked me um, if she could take a look in my concrete space. It was very emotional because I didn't want her to enter just out of shame, fear of losing her. I was certain she didn't want to see me again if she would look in my concrete space. Terrified. But I had to. It felt like I could not do otherwise because what I felt and experienced, the new feelings about gratitude and the emotions, and it was all it was so unreal, but I wanted more. And then came the moment. I let her in. And I was ready to use my rage to feel safe again and slam that door shut and sit in my corner again. And the thing what I've done for 2 decades. Um, but I wanted differently. So I let her in my dark, scary, wet cave, which was my home. And she didn't say anything. Nothing hateful, no negativity, no emotion at all. I was baffled. And, I was used to the fact that um, usually I would be sitting there alone. But to my amazement, it didn't happen. And at some point, she turned around and after looking around in my immense space, and she embraced me and she said whisperingly, "May I stay here today with you?" And time stood still. Over time, she knew how to feel at home in that space. No luxury, no light, no nothing. And together we found a way to communicate in that space. And it did so much good. Better than having to talk with myself all that time. But this was totally different. The happiness I had was indescribable. As time went by, it became strangely lighter in that room. And at some point, I woke up one day and there were two windows, and fresh sunlight came through. And I remember going, and I turned around and I saw this her sweet smile smiling at me and saying good morning. I was One day I remember the feeling crept on me saying, "Hey, let's sell this place," but Jesus, nobody want to buy that dark cave. It's too unpleasant, even though there was some sunlight coming in. So through the many conversations I had with Daniela, she came with a plan and she said, "Hey, why don't we rebuild it?" And we repaired the wall so no water came in anymore. Fresh wallpaper, white color, sand tones. It gave me a feeling of I'm safe, I'm okay. And that's what I heard every day ever since. It's okay, because there was still a dark spot in that area in my concrete space because the windows couldn't light that up and the door was open, but it was still there, but it was okay. And I just feel grateful and positive and full of confidence being able to communicate that and have her see what I see now in order to help. And I hope this story, this visualization, can be used for you as well, brother. Um, to be able to show where you are, uh, also with your partner. So, yeah. Take care, stand strong, and beard the fuck on.